You know, with everything going on yesterday, with all of the leaks about the future of Pokemon Generation 10, the next Legends game, for a second there, it was almost easy to forget that we're getting a new Pokemon game in 2 days. That is how much leaked yesterday. But today, we finally have our review scores and reviews themselves for Pokemon Legends ZA. So today we're doing a sort of roundup video, seeing what critics have to say about Legends ZA, the good, the bad, and the ugly. Currently, over on Metacritic, it is sitting at an 81, which notably is lower than Pokemon Legends Arceus, but it's also quite a bit higher than Pokemon Scarlet and Violet. So let's go ahead and take a look at some of these reviews and see what people that have played the full final retail version of the game have to say about it. If you are new here and you enjoy Pokemon Legends ZA content and general Pokemon coverage, I would appreciate you liking the video and subscribing. Let's get into it. Okay, people, welcome back to the channel. Really appreciate the support on yesterday's late night upload, going over all of the leaks from the Game Freak Terror Leak 2.0, or I guess it's really the same leak because it's from the original hack that happened last October. But today we're taking a look at the reviews for Legends ZA. Yes, we are getting a new Pokemon game in just a couple of days here, depending on where you are. It's unlocking tomorrow morning based on your country and your time zone and all that. But we have our reviews. Now, I will say right now, I have played a bit of this game, so I can interject a little bit with some of my early impressions of it. I might also do a separate early impressions video later today. If you want to see some early impressions with some Switch 1 gameplay running on an actual Nintendo Switch 1, let me know in the comments down below. I would love to do that video for you all if you want to see that. Otherwise, I think I might wait and do a full review of the Switch 2 version this weekend once I probably blow through the game in a couple of days because I'll be playing it nonstop. But let's go ahead and look at some of these reviews, starting with the most positive, and then we'll gradually get to the reviews that have a little bit more criticisms. VGC gave it a perfect score, a 10 out of 10. They say that Pokemon Legends ZA is a grand adventure that once again proves that the Legends series is home to the most interesting ideas Game Freak has. It's a game that understands its audience, and it feels like a love letter to both players who grew up with X and Y and those who have been here the entire time. The new battle system really worked for me, and the rogue mega battles are bombastic fun, even if, like the traditional turn-based offering, it can get very easy as you level up your team. I hope that the Pokemon Legends series is here to stay. So, once again, I played a little bit of it, and I mean, you could see this from just the trailers, and this is what I was saying in my video last week about You Are Wrong About Legends ZA. It's such an interesting game. They're doing so many new things with it, and they've set it entirely in one city, which is actually very different for how the game plays. And I think this is going to be where a lot of people are more polarized on it, whether you like the Lumio City setting and the wild zones or you don't, whether you like the bigger focus on battling versus catching. There's going to be two sides of the fan base on this one, I think. I kind of lie in the middle based on what I played so far, but also I don't want to, say anything too early because it might change by the time we get to the end of it. But yes, it is definitely a breath of fresh air, the same way that Legends Arceus was, just in that it's very different. Whether or not it's different for the better or for the worse, once again, I think that will depend on the player, but it is a very different feeling Pokemon game, which is nice to see. I mean, for so long, right? For generations 1 through really 6, but even 7 with the totem, the trials and stuff, like those were basically just gym battles, right? And then Galar. So really for 8 generations, the series was pretty stagnant until we got Legends Arceus. So it is very exciting to see Game Freak doing new stuff here and trying to push the series forward in new and interesting ways. The Sixth Axis also gave it a perfect score that says, unlike the most recent Pokemon Scarlet and Violet, Legends ZA is a game that really holds your attention. The spiritual successor to Legends Arceus, it's learned from the mistakes of the distant past and beautifully shows what city life is like in the Pokemon universe. I can see myself playing this for another 100 hours as I finish my Pokédex, shiny hunt, and generally have a great time. This is easily the best Pokemon game on the market. So they're saying it's the best Pokemon game, I guess, on the market, so currently available. So really just the Switch era. Of the Switch era, this is their favorite, which is pretty high praise, but also I think for a lot of people, maybe some of the Switch era Pokemon stuff has been a little lower tier. I love Legends Arceus. That's my favorite Pokemon game since at least the 3DS era anyway. And then I feel a little mixed on some of the other things. I think Scarlet and Violet had really good bones. It was just a little, maybe not a little underdeveloped, maybe very much underdeveloped, but what was there in terms of gameplay and like the setting and everything was really cool. But it certainly had a lot of issues. And, they took the 3 years, right? They took the 3 years to make this game not be a replica and a do-over of Scarlet and Violet. It's actually a finished game. I will say, playing on Switch 1, I am surprised by how well it runs. Now, let me be clear, the bar is in the dirt for performance of a Pokemon game after Scarlet and Violet. And it's not perfect, right? There is definitely a lot of pop-in. There are some frame drops, but it runs significantly better than Scarlet and Violet. And I would even say it probably runs better than Legends Arceus and looks better than Legends Arceus, even with like the flat modeling and stuff. I don't love the Scarlet and Violet art style, which this certainly carries over. But in terms of performance, I would say it's probably, even on Switch 1, the best performing Pokemon game that's not Let's Go, I would say, in terms of like frame drops and pop in and stuff like that. Visually, I actually do think it looks pretty nice when you're playing it, and that's just on Switch 1. I didn't do a full playthrough because I want to play through it on Switch 2 in 4K 60, but that is worth noting as well. Nintenderos gave it a 9.5. They say, thanks to its mature story tinged with nostalgia, its fast-paced gameplay, and its remarkably smooth performance, Legends ZA feels like one of the best entries in the series, a must-play for any Pokemon fan. While it pays a heartfelt tribute to the franchise's past with its Kalos setting, it also stands as a clear glimpse of what the future of Pokemon can become. This was like one of the main points in my video last week. Just even if Legends ZA might maybe feel like a half step or something, it's clearly proof to me, and even Legends Arceus was this, but even Scarlet and Violet, it's proof to me that Game Freak does want to evolve the series and do new and exciting things with it. And we basically, if these games aren't proof of it enough, just look at the leaks from yesterday and tell me with a straight face that Game Freak isn't trying to push the series forward. If you missed those leaks, I have a video going over everything. They're doing some pretty crazy stuff with future entries. So even if Legends ZA, I think, might be a miss for some people, it's still a good sign for the future of the series, I guess, if that makes sense. Scrolling past a couple here, Screen Rant gave it a 9 out of 10, saying it's a fun, fresh take on the series formula that really helps Legends ZA set itself apart as one of the best entries yet. Shaq News, same thing, 9 out of 10. Legends ZA gave me just about everything I wanted from a new Legends game. It continues the trend of bucking against series norms while maintaining the essence of what makes these games so special for fans. Bit of a lengthier blurb from RPG site here. They gave it a 9 out of 10. Years ago, I said that Legends Arceus proved that there was room in the Pokemon world for more games like Colosseum to exist and to even thrive. While Legends ZA wasn't quite what I had in mind, it feels like validation nonetheless. Pokemon is at its best when Game Freak is allowed to experiment with what a Pokemon game can actually be, and Legends ZA is affirmation that the series isn't done evolving, much like the Pokemon themselves. If this is the future of the series, more experimental Legends titles which attempt to broaden the Pokemon world in ways that only they can, instead of merely retreading old ground with remakes, I couldn't be happier. I totally agree with that. There might be issues with Legends ZA, and it is a little weird that it's all in Lumiose and they have these, sectioned off wild zones, but the fact that they are pushing the series in this direction, I think, is such a great thing, especially with champions there for the hardcore competitive turn-based crowd. We have an 8 out of 10 from Games Radar here. They say that Pokemon Legends ZA offers a true slice of life Pokemon experience thanks to its anime-style real-time combat system and wholesome world-building elements. While its single city setting can sometimes feel a bit samey, Lumiose is densely packed with things to do and discover. This is a world worth getting lost in. That's another thing too. Once again, I really think, this is true for every Pokemon game, but I feel like there's going to be two camps on this one. I have my own criticisms of Lumiose as a setting from what I've played so far, but also it does offer a very rich experience in terms of just showing you what a Pokemon big city can look like and having these characters actually in this world, seeing them out there with their Pokemon on the streets of Lumiose, and even seeing like a Trubbish on a trash can and catching it outside of a wild area, or having these characters that are clearly related to certain characters from X and Y, for example, or even AZ himself. It is very nice to see this type of take on a Pokemon city, right? Back when they did Black and White and they had that big New York city in that game, this is what they were like going for back then, right? And now we see it fully realized. And yeah, I think it's awesome. I think people that are really into like the characters and like the smaller character moments and all that stuff, I think they're gonna really enjoy the setting here. The writing is also pretty good, pretty witty, I've noticed so far from what I've played. There's a lot of like good burns when you're doing the ZA Battle Royale, where like you'll kind of have like you're throwing shade at like the other trainers back and forth, which is kind of funny. So yeah, the world and like the characters and stuff is pretty good in this game, but it might not be for everybody, I feel like. Cog Connected, I've never heard of them, gave it a 78, saying Pokemon Legends ZA isn't afraid to make some much-needed modernizations. However, the small world and a repetitive gameplay loop make it not the shiniest of the Pokemon games. So I think this is where another split will happen in the community. I actually really like the gameplay loop of during the day, you're going around town, you're doing side quests, you're doing the wild zones and catching Pokemon, doing story stuff, and then at night you have the battle zones where you get these points and you can do the rank up matches against specific opponents to move up the rankings of the ZA Royale. However, I do think the wild zones in particular are maybe the biggest downside to this game in that they feel very restricted. Legends Arceus to me is so great because it fully realizes the idea of this open world wild Pokemon game where you're in this wilderness and you're just catching these wild Pokemon. This, it feels almost like you're on a guided safari tour or something, right? Where you have these very small zones, and there's a lot of them in the game, don't get me wrong, but there's also only like 5 or 6 Pokemon in each, maybe a little bit more, maybe a little bit less, depending on which one it is. It feels a little too, I don't know. It's weird. I think the wild zones are kind of disappointing in how they are structured, but also in the context of it being in Lumiose, I don't really know how they could have done it differently. I think that's more of a root design issue of it being just set in Kalos, or sorry, set in Lumiose. But I think I might change my mind on that once I play more, once I start shiny hunting, see how that actually works in this game. But yeah, I think the gameplay loop is good of like the daytime stuff, and then nighttime. My only criticism is the wild zones. Really, I think the battles are a lot of fun. Game Reactor UK gave it a 7 out of 10, saying, "I will not explain away or excuse Game Freak's bizarre way of constructing their games, nor will I claim that it makes sense for these AAA titles to be so incredibly stingy with rudimentary details, such as 3D modeled balconies in a city inspired by Paris, or voice acting." Yeah, voice acting, we gotta move on, Game Freak. We gotta add voice acting. The opening of this game is so jarring, having these like pretty nicely animated cutscenes and like the text popping up at the bottom, and the characters are making the mouth movements in the animation, but then they're not producing sound. It's very jarring at this point. We gotta get voice acting. But they say, sorry to interrupt, they say, but at the same time, this is fundamentally a game that is once again about collecting, developing, and battling with Pokemon. That's what you do most, and that's what works best. Nintendo Life also gave it a 7, saying Legends ZA should be celebrated for its fabulous real-time combats and its largely smooth jump to the Switch 2, but in condensing things down to one single location, it loses part of the Pokemon magic that Arceus and many other entries managed to amplify. I'll forever find filling out my Pokédex fun, and for the Switch 2 generation, this is a good starting point for the franchise, but if the Legends series is to continue, it needs to recapture its personality and fuse that real-time system with a bit more freedom. That's really it, right? It being in Lumiose is very restricting just in how you are catching Pokemon, which I think for a lot of people is like the main thing about Pokemon, and it can still be very fun doing the wild zones, don't get me wrong, but they definitely put a much bigger emphasis on battling in this game versus catching Pokemon, which I don't know if I necessarily agree with. However, I think it's fine in the context of the series as a whole and how we typically get games almost every year. The past several games have been all about catching and these big open worlds. It's kind of cool to get a game that is in the other direction, right? A more condensed experience that is, this relatively small map overall. However, it's just slam-packed, jam-packed with things to do in it, NPCs, different Pokemon to catch. Even if I might prefer Arceus or even the gameplay of Scarlet and Violet, I do think it's a interesting and kind of refreshing change of pace from those more catching-oriented Pokemon games. Eurogamer gave it a 6 out of 10, saying Lumiose City could do with work, but Pokemon Legends ZA is a much more tightly focused and delightfully goofy return to better form, or is a much more tightly focused and delightfully goofy return to better form, at least by modern Pokemon standards. And then we have IGN's review in progress. They actually didn't put a score on it yet. It makes me wonder how late they sent review codes. IGN said, "I'm just so genuinely excited about what Game Freak has done here." No score attached to that. And then, yeah, it's mostly 7 and 8s, and then, a couple of those higher scores. VG247 said, "Hopefully Game Freak will continue using Legends series as a playground. Maybe a return to pixel graphics, just a suggestion. But for now, Lumiose City has been a treat to revisit." A Comic Book gave it an 8, saying Legends ZA just felt good. I enjoyed exploring the city, collecting side missions, and gathering clothes to craft my ideal outfits. Not every mechanic is a win, and with some of the platforming elements of exploring the city felt a bit clunky. It's a game that had me wanting to come back for more. I appreciated having a bit more of a straightforward story than in games like Scarlet and Violet, while still having plenty of side content to immerse myself in. The main story is a good length, and with all of those side missions and hidden areas to explore, I can easily see myself sinking many more hours into Legends ZA even after the credits roll. So an 8 out of 10 from them. I did want to go to this Nintendo Life review. They had a little bit more to say, like well, certainly in the review itself, which I don't want to read their entire review verbatim here. You can definitely go check out this and read it for yourself. I wanted to read through their pros and cons here, their joys and cons. That's really cute. Nintendo Life. I just realized that. Joy-Con, right? The joys of Legends ZA for them are the battles are genuinely tactical and extremely fun. I agree. I think the battle system is really cool, especially I didn't realize this. Positioning is really important, and how you're in a city and sometimes there might be like a car or like a lamppost or something. You can actually kind of, if you can get your Pokemon to go behind it, you can kind of hide and avoid attacks because they actually get in the way. Like it'll stop a bubble beam or something, which is kind of interesting. Rogue Mega Evolution fights much more improved over Frenzied Pokemon from Arceus. On Switch 2, it feels like a smooth, almost constant 60 FPS. When I played it at PAX West on Switch 2, I didn't notice any frame drops, but maybe depending on the visual effects on screen, it might change a little bit there, might go down a little bit. The cons, visuals feel lifeless and flat. I kind of agree in that I just don't love the art style, but it's certainly visually much more impressive than a Scarlet and Violet. I would say I like it visually more than Sword and Shield. I prefer the cel-shaded look of Legends Arceus, but yeah, I mean, that's certainly a valid criticism of Pokemon at this point. Wild Zones feel far too small and a little pointless. I also agree they are definitely too small. And, you know, there's a lot of them in the game, but also, like I said, you see like 5 or 6 Pokemon in them, and that's it. It just feels very restricted. Compared to Arceus. And they even say that here, Lumio City overall feels restrictive as a setting. So those are the reviews for Pokemon Legends Arceus, currently sitting at an 81 on Metacritic for the Switch 2 version, with 42 critic reviews. I don't think there's any Switch 1 reviews. I guess I didn't send codes for that. Let me know your thoughts in the comments down below. Are you still excited for this game? Have the reviews changed you or swayed you in one way or another? I will say, I've been following the leaks very closely. I can't wait to play through the full game and see the story and how it all unfolds on Switch 2 and do my full review for you all. But I think there's some really cool stuff in this game that people are really going to be into. But like I said, I mean, once again, this is the case with every Pokemon game now. There's going to be that division. But I think Legends ZA is a very fresh take on the series, especially with the battle system. There are just a few asterisks on the gameplay that I don't know if I would have necessarily wanted, specifically the Lumios and the Wild Zones, but obviously that does make it very unique in what it is. So let me know your thoughts on all this in the comments down below. Follow me on Twitter at BoTalksGames. Check out all my other Pokemon videos I've been doing leading up to the launch of Legends ZA. And subscribe here for more content coverage. Like I said, if there's demand in the comments, I might do my early impressions video later today. If not, I'll wait and do a full review this weekend for you. So until next time, folks, peace.